Shalom Aleichem, and welcome everyone as we have a special edition this week. This week being Parshat Bamidbar, and as we all know that as soon as Shabbat comes out, we're going straight from Kodesh to Kodesh, and we're going to go straight into the Yom Tov of Shavuot. Now, there is a connection between Bamidbar, Parshat Bamidbar, and the holiday of Shavuot. And I hope that through our special edition of the class, Bamidbar Shavuot, we would come out with a better understanding of what Parshat Bamidbar is and how is it a preparation for Matan Torah, of what is the holiday of Shavuot. We'll start off with the Al-Shech HaKadosh. The Al-Shech HaKadosh comes on Parshat Bamidbar and tells us that when Moshe and Aharon had to start counting the people of Israel, right? It's called the Book of Numbers, a lot of counting. Hashem loves the Jewish people. He counts them a lot. It says Moshe and Aharon took these men who had been designated by their names. That Moshe took the Nisi'im that were designated by the names. The Al-Shech HaKadosh says, why did Moshe Rabbeinu wait till Hashem said who was going to be the Nisi'im? The Al-Shech HaKadosh said that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to make anyone jealous. Didn't want to say, you're the Nasi and you're not the Nasi. So he said, even though I know this guy is supposed to be the Nasi, until Hashem says it, Beferush, and this is the guy's name, designated by their names, I'm not taking him as a Nasi because I don't want to make anyone else jealous. Now, you don't just become a Nasi all of a sudden. You have to be plenty of wisdom. You have to have Hasidut. You have to have Anava. You have to have a lot of things. But Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'm not going to choose them until Hashem says, in order not to create jealousy, one Jew over another. How can I select one Jew over another? And then it says they gathered together the entire Jewish nation. So first Moshe Rabbeinu took the Nisiim, the Zekenim, and then he went in front of the entire nation. Why didn't he gather the whole nation and then say, these are the Nisiim, let them come here up front to help out? No. Again, the Al-Shech HaKadosh said, Moshe Rabbeinu did this on purpose. He didn't want to use the public gathering to announce their appointment. He wanted to do it in private, this way, not calling too much attention, not causing people to become jealous. He did it b'tznu'ah. He did it very privately, very respectfully, in a way for everyone to retain their kavod. The Al-Shech HaKadosh says, this is the reason why we have Parshat Bamidbar before Shavuot. Shavuot, we get the Torah. But before you get the Torah, Derech Eretz Kadma la Torah. Derech Eretz, to behave properly, behave with respect, that comes before giving the Torah. Maintaining human decency, respect, obedience for one's fellow man precedes the study of Torah. It's the most pivotal role in the life of a Jew. Of a Jew who goes according to the Torah, number one is Derech Eretz. The Al-Shech HaKadosh says. We find that Nebuchadnezzar throws Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah into a roaring, fiery furnace because they weren't worshiping an idol that he told them to do. And they remained unhurt. And they were strolling around in the fire. So Al-Shech HaKadosh says, why did they not leave? Okay, they didn't get hurt right away, right? So just walk out of the oven. Why are you still staying inside there? Does it say anywhere in halakha that once someone is thrown into a fire, he must remain there? The Medrash Tanchuma, the Al-Shech brings down, on Parshat Noach tells us the rationale. When Noach was in the ark, right, he didn't leave until Hashem told him to leave. Even though he checked outside, he sent a bird, he knew it was okay already. He didn't come out. Why? He said, Hashem told me to go in. I'm going to wait till Hashem tells me to come out. That's called Derech Eretz. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, says the Al-Shech HaKadosh, they stayed in the fire because the king put them inside. It would be disrespectful to Nebuchadnezzar to come out without his permission. So they stayed in the fire until Nebuchadnezzar said, now come out. In order to show Derech Eretz. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha, explains that no amount of hardship, no amount of suffering can justify a breach in Derech Eretz. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah remain in the flames, defying death, because they believe just as one who enters the furnace, al Kiddush Hashem, likewise one who remains in the furnace for Derech Eretz will also not be harmed. Derech Eretz is the most important thing in the world. Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem says, go free the Jews. What could be more important than go freeing the Jews? And he says, I can't go. Why? Aharon might not feel well. Might be upset. And he's there right now, and then I'm coming in and going to take over the position. Derech Eretz, Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'm not going to free the Jews because it's going to hurt somebody. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, go count the Levi'im in this week's Parshat, from the age of a month. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I cannot, Hashem. I cannot go into their tent. It's not tzniut. It's going to be embarrassing to go in and start counting. So the Hashem told Moshe, you do your part, I'll do mine. Moshe stood in front of the tent, and the Shekhinah came out and said how many Levi'im were in that. Moshe carried out the command with Hashem's assistance, which did not break the rules of Derech Eretz. The Shekhinah would say how many Levi'im were inside in order for Moshe not to break the Derech Eretz. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz continues. Yosef HaTzadik, he was accosted by Potiphar's wife. She held onto his jacket, he ran out, and he left it there. And she used it right away to accuse him. The Ramban explains that the reason why Yosef didn't take his coat back, we always know because if you stay there one more second, but the Ramban explains a little different. He says it would have been disrespectful to pull it out of her hands. And that's why he didn't pull it out. It was better to risk his reputation than to violate the obligation of Derech Eretz. Again and again, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, Al Shech HaKadosh, they're showing us that Derech Eretz is the most important of it all. The Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, which we learned here about 8-9 weeks ago, here in the shul. We have here a story. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was sitting and teaching. And all of a sudden he smelled garlic. Somebody ate garlic, something, and came to Shi'ur, he's breathing, everyone's smelling garlic. So now Rebbe was very sensitive. So he said, person who ate garlic, get out. Out! Can I continue the Shi'ur? It's overpowering. A person has to come to Shi'ur, to the synagogue in a way that's respectful to everybody around them. Can't come with the garlic breath. So now what happened? Amad Rabbi Hiya v'yatza. Now Rabbi Hiya was not the culprit. He didn't eat garlic. But Rabbi Hiya got up and he left. So what happened? Hiya was the highest student in the class. So everyone saw Rabbi Hiya walked out. So Gemara says, Amadu chulam v'yatzeu. So the whole Shi'ur got up. Everybody walked out. Everybody left the Shi'ur. Now, b'shachar, matzor Rabbi Shimon b'Rabbi l'Rabbi Hiya. Rabbi's son, Rabbi Shimon, met Rabbi Hiya. Amallah, he said to him, Attahu shetze'arta la'aba. You're the one who caused my father a lot of pain. Either because you ate the garlic, you're thinking that you're the one that ate the garlic, or because you walked out, and the whole shir walked out. Amallah, he said to him, Lo tiye kazot be'Yisrael. We cannot have such a thing that the guilty person is embarrassed in Klal Yisrael. So Rabbi Hiya decides that it's better to break the whole shiur than for someone to get embarrassed.
He wasn't embarrassed himself. Like he's the first one who got up, so all the embarrassment is on his.
It looked that way, and he's ready to take that in order not to embarrass somebody else. Rabbi Hiya did not want to see the individual who had annoyed Rebbe embarrassed. What about the shiur, about the walkout? There was no Torah that day. Derech Eretz takes over is the most important. You can't have Torah without Derech Eretz. Derech Eretz Kamal Torah. The Talmud Berachot says, the Meiri writes, based on a commentary to the Meiri's commentary, the Talmud Berachot says that the quality of human dignity is the most endearing and beloved quality in all of Judaism. Yahadut, the most important part of Yahadut is giving respect to someone. The Talmud Moed Katan says that one Tana blessed another Tana. One rabbi of the Mishnah blessed another rabbi of the Mishnah, period, that said, may you never cause anyone else embarrassment. And may you never cause any embarrassment yourself. Staying away from embarrassing somebody, that Derech Kamal Torah is the most important. Harav Mendel Meriminov wants to explain the rationale of Derech Eretz Kamal Torah. Why do we make it a big deal? So far we've said that Derech Eretz is Kamal Torah because that is the most important part of the whole Torah. Most important part of the whole Yahudut is to respect another Jew. So Harav Mendel Meriminov says we have to look to what was given before the Torah. The manna, he says, the manna that they ate in the desert was given before the Torah. First was the manna, then was the Torah. The people were instructed to gather a measure of manna daily as a test whether or not they would observe the Torah. The manna was given to show that you had to have emunah, you had to believe in Hashem, right? And that's how you know if you believe in the Torah. Rav Mendel explains the concept of decent human behavior, respect for the rights of others, and staying away from jealousy, greed, is all based on the premise, the belief that Hashem provides for every individual what he needs. That Hashem is a mashgiach, Hashem controls the world, and everything happens under Hashem's guiding hand. And so if you can believe that, then you can have the Torah. That's the manna. That's the Torah. That's why it's Derech Eretz Kamal Torah. In order to receive the Torah, one must place his trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That shows that Hashem is Mashgiach. He's here. He controls. He does. And everything is in his hands. We have on Shavuot, we read, the minhag is to read it and learn Megillat Ruth. Right? Megillat Ruth. Ruth, who is Ruth? Ruth was a Goya, Moabite, and she married a Jew. Whether her conversion was proper or not at first, or was it later on by the time that she converted by Ruth, before her husband, after her husband, whatever the story is, her husband dies, her sister Orpah is also married to a Jew, brothers, he dies, and Ruth says, listen, my husband died, everybody died, I'm going back to Eretz Yisrael. And Ruth says to Naomi, I'm going with you. And Naomi says, no. And she pushes her away a few times. That's what we learn. When the Ger comes, he wants to be Megayer, we push him away a few times. And Naomi continues and goes. And then Ruth goes with Naomi. The Midrash says, why was she called Naomi? Why was she called Naomi? Because her actions were sweet and pleasant. She was Noam, she was very pleasant. Rav Pam says that Ruth had the power to go and follow Naomi, not because she understood what the Torah said, not because she said, oh, it's right, the logic is correct. She says that Ruth followed Naomi because Naomi was a pleasant person. When she saw the Derech Eretz coming off Naomi, she said that I have to go into this more. I have to see what it's more. Rav Pam says from here, he says, this is why Derech Eretz is Kamal Torah. But Rav Pam says more. He says, you want to be Mekar of people? People think you have to be Mekar of people. They go and get people come closer to Judaism. Rav Pam says, you want to be Mekar of people? This is how you do it. Influencing them by your pleasantness. When you're pleasant to people, they see it, they say, I want to be around this person. I want to get to know what makes this guy pleasant. Why is he so pleasant? A couple of weeks ago, we shared a story on a Friday night on Shabbat night, we shared how Rav Aryeh Kaplan, who wrote the famous Torah anthology and the Living Torah, right? Rav Aryeh Kaplan was a young man when he was nifter. He didn't grow up religious either. The story goes that at some point as a teenager, he decided he wanted to check out yeshiva. And one of the only yeshivot, there were a couple of yeshivot at that time, but one of the main yeshivot at the time was Torah V'dat. So he went to Torah V'dat, and he was there for a couple of months. And afterwards, he said, you know what? After a few months, he said, I'm checking out. Not for me. We're not talking the same language. So he told his dorm mates that I'm leaving. And his friends in the dorm, the next day, they woke up early morning before he got up, and they all dressed, hats and jackets. They all got up, and they told him. He woke up and he says, "I'm leaving." And they said, "Okay, we're gonna walk you to the train. We'll take your bags." He says, "You don't get it. I'm leaving yeshiva. I'm leaving like Orthodox Judaism. I'm not interested in it anymore." They said, "So what? You're a Jew, and you're our friend for whatever time you were here, and we're going to walk you out. We're gonna escort you." He said, "Okay, listen. There's something I missed. If you're willing to go with someone who's trying to leave your camp, and you're gonna go with them and help him and carry him and escort him, there's something here to the Torah that I missed. And as such, I have to check it." Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan stayed in yeshiva and became the great Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan that he became. There are actually some YouTube clips you can watch where he speaks. It's just amazing to listen to the man as he speaks in the way he shows the wisdom of Torah. And all happened because people were pleasant. You want to be makar of somebody, it all happens with pleasantness. A couple of years ago, I think I shared here another interesting story, another famous story. I think a lot of people heard this story. There was a Israeli secular girl who finished her tour in the Israeli Defense Force, and she decided that she wanted to go and see the world and explore, and she ended up in India, and she lost contact with her family, and her parents got a little concerned. I'm going to mikatzer the story, I'm going to shorten the story. And the parents got a little concerned, and so they had a son, Ari, and they called Ari. They said, "Ari, listen, you got to go find your sister. We don't know. We know she's in India. We can't find her. We're not hearing from her. It's already been a few weeks. Please go and find out." Now, Ari also grew up in a secular family, but he became religious. And his parents, when he became religious, his parents were very upset. They thought it was the end of the world. But now, what was about to happen with their daughter, they were going even more crazy. So Ari goes to India, and finding a person in India apparently is very hard. There's a lot of people there, but he makes all the efforts and he finds her. She's in a cult, and basically in a Buddha church or whatever they call it, a group with a monastery, and the Buddha monastery. They're there, and he speaks to her, and she says to her brother, "You have no idea. Just like you found Yahadut, you found Judaism. I found this cult, I found this religion. I love it. It's so exciting. It makes me happy." And Ari's like, "Listen, but our parents are very concerned for you. You have to come back home. You have to talk to them." She says, "I don't want to leave. I'm learning so much. I'm seeing so much. I'm actually becoming a person for the first time in my life. I feel fulfilled. I feel satisfied." No, Ari convinces her. She says, "Okay, I'll come back to Eretz Yisrael so I can finish up my affairs, tie off whatever I have. I'll see my parents, and then I'll tell everybody Shalom Yisrael, and I go back to India." And she actually says to her brother, "I'm engaged to this guru, the guy in charge of this whole thing." So he gets her back there to Yisrael, and he's trying his best to convince her that Judaism is the right way and don't spend time with other things. And one day before she's about to head back to India, he says, "Listen, can you come with me? I have a couple of errands to do." Takes her along. His plan was to go to a certain shul where there was a dynamic speaker of a rabbi there, and I was hoping that rabbi could convince her to stay in Eretz Yisrael and not go after all this craziness. And lo and behold, his luck was that the rabbi was out that day. And one of the kollel guys from the shul got up and spoke in between Mincha and Aravit, and she was there. And the guy spoke about Hashavat Aveda. You found something, you should return it. And he was going through some of the halachic ramifications of it, and was telling her. And she heard about that. Ari felt it was a lost opportunity. He felt that the rabbi was there, would save her. She bought her tickets. She said goodbye to her parents. Her parents are crying. They lost a daughter. And she went to India. And they didn't hear from her for a few weeks, a few months. And all of a sudden, one day, she calls and she says, I'm coming back home. And no, of course, the parents weren't upset. No one was upset. Everyone just said, okay. She came back home and made a huge party for her. But her brother, Ari, really wanted to know. He said, you have to tell me, what caused you to come back? What happened? You were in love with the guru. You were going to get married to him. You were engaged to him. What happened? She said it was actually a few days before our wedding that we were walking outside, the guru and myself, and there was a wallet on the floor. And you can see there was a passport to it. It was a tourist's Paris passport, wallet, cash, everything inside. So seeing it, I was ready to go and return it. But then I saw my fiance, the guru, took it and said, look what God gave us. Took all the money out, threw the wallet and the passport in the garbage and continued walking away. I said to him, how can you do this? You speak about spirituality, about being good, a good force in the world. And yet when you found this, and he says, the guru tells me, you can't go against the blessing that God's given you. If God gives you money and he gives you, and you found it, it's your blessing. It's like you're smacking God's hand if you don't take it. And she says, right then, I remember when you took me to that shul, that kollel guy spoke about Shabbat Avedah, and I said, this is the huge difference between Judaism and any other ism. The derech eretz kadma Torah. And when I realized that, I said, I have no place in this Buddha sect and cult, and my place is with the Jewish people. And I ran right back to Eretz Yisrael. The lesson of the story is plentiful. First is, like we've been talking up until this point, derech eretz kadma Torah. The number one thing is derech eretz. So much so, we already learned that it's more important than anything else. That is Yahadut, is derech eretz. It's to have respect. And Torah is that. That is the main point. We get to see from this specific story that even if someone is so far off, right? If a Jew is so far off and you think really she has no way back, you have no idea the potential that a person has to come back to Judaism. And I think the third thing is, never think that if someone heard the wrong drasha, the wrong shiur or something like that, I wasted my time. Opposite. That shiur that you thought maybe wasn't beneficial at all, that may be the one that really changes somebody's mind, someone's idea, and something like that. This is our first lesson of this week's Parshat, Derech Eretz Kadma Torah. Let's move on to another lesson, and I think it also is related to Derech Eretz. Remember, Parshat Bamidbar is right before Shavuot. Shavuot Matan Torah. So Bamidbar, Parshat Bamidbar is really like the prerequisite course. You go to college, you got to take Bio 101 before you can take anything else. Before you can get the Torah, you have to have Parshat Bamidbar. In this week's Parashah, we meet a Nasi from Bnei Gad. 1 minute, his name is Eliasaf ben Deuel. Then you go to the next Perek, right? So Perek Aleph Pasuk Yudal, his name is Eliasaf ben Deuel. You go Perek Bet Pasuk Yudal, his name now becomes Eliasaf ben Reuel. Yeah, he goes from a Dalit to a Rish. And again in Parshat Naso also he ends up being Reuel. Well, why the change? Dalit is a Dalit, a Rish is a Rish. If someone said, instead of Ehad, he said Aher, what is he saying in Shema, right? Dalit and the Rish is very important to differentiate. So how could the Torah at one point say Eliasaf ben Deuel and at one point say Eliasaf ben Reuel? And so, the Imre Noam, which is quoted by the Chidah, tells us why his name was changed. He was a Nasi of Bnei Gad. And in every part of the camp, right, so you had the 333, the Shvatim on each side. And one of those 3 Shvatim, their Nasi was like in charge of all the whole side. Right? So you had a Nasi for each Shevet. And then one was representative of them all 3.
1 from 3?
Yeah, he was selected the head of the degel, the head of the flag. the first of the flag, the head of of that side. So let's say you had Shevet 1, 2, and 3. So let's say Shevet 2 would be the head of it. So what happened was, Shevet Gad and Shevet Dan were on the same side. And Dan was Zilpah's Bechor, and Gad was Bil'az Bechor. When Gad saw that Dan was chosen, he could have said, why was Dan's Bechor of Zilpah being chosen as the head of the degel, the head of the flag, head of that side of the camp, whereas I'm, who is a Bechor of Bil'ah, why am I not? The Imre Noam says, because Eliasaph ben Deuel did not say this, he didn't make a complaint, Hashem changed his name from Deuel to Reuel, which means friend of Hashem. He became Hashem's friend. One of the zechutim that he got was that when Moshe Rabbeinu was going to be buried, he was going to be buried in the portion of Shevet Gad. Reuel.
Uriel is something?
No, Uriel is different. Reuel is a friend of Hashem. Harav Zilberstein in the Leinu L'Shabeach explains what it means to be a friend of Hashem. Being a friend of Hashem is that Hashem helps you out with what you need in life. If you have now Hashem on your side, as a friend of yours, when you have a friend on your side who loves you, it's going to help you out with stuff you need. He says there was a boy, that there were two boys. As the story goes like this, there was a boy who got a very nice shidduch, and at a young age, and everybody was watching him for the past couple of years. Everything was working well for this guy. He got a golden hand. Everything he touched turned gold. Everything worked out well for this boy. So people were wondering what happened. How did this guy get such a success? Everything he does becomes successful. Everything works out for the boy. And so the Rav explained what happened. The Rav said that this boy, when he was bar mitzvah, there were two boys in the shul that had a bar mitzvah the exact same week. And they both wanted to learn the haftarah, and they both wanted to make the kiddush in the shul that week. And whatever the policy of the shul wasn't to work that way. And so the Gaboim made a raffle. And they said, you're going to make a lottery. Each boy has to choose one. And the two boys, they went ahead and they chose. And one boy won, and the other boy didn't. The boy who won came home. He was so excited. And the boy who lost was very upset. The boy who won was sitting at home. And he says, while I was going to bed, I started to think about my friend who lost. And I said, he's probably very sad. And so at that point, they decided, you know what? I'm going to let him do it. I cannot be happy in my bar mitzvah if I know I'm causing someone else pain. So he went ahead and was mevater and gave it to the other person. And the Rav says from that day on, this boy has seen success after success after success. Because he was mevater. The Leinu L'Shabeach brings another story, also regarding bar mitzvah, who was this bar mitzvah boy, had a beautiful voice. But when it came to his day of bar mitzvah, he read with a very strange voice. Like he made like and everything came out weird. People said Mazel Tov, but his parents are very upset. And his parents said, we trained you. For weeks you were training so nicely and everything was so beautiful. You have the beautiful. Why did you on purpose mess up your voice? And the boy said, last week my friend was bar mitzvah in the shul, and he doesn't have such a good voice. And people were talking about it. And I said, if I'm going to sing with a beautiful voice, you know what's going to happen? They're going to compare. Oh, that boy doesn't know how to read. This boy this and that. He said, I'd rather not that happen. I'd rather myself mess it up. This way, he doesn't get embarrassed. And Rav Zilberstein says that this boy also, his life turned out to be very successful. Now there is a famous author of the Sedei Chemed, Harav Chizkiyahu Medini, famous rabbi, renowned Talmudic genius. There's a famous story with him as well. The story goes that he was in Kollel, and he was learning, and someone got jealous of him. And someone paid off an Arab woman to say that he was making advances at her, and was trying to do something improper with this cleaner, with this Arab woman. And it got out, and people started talking. Now the Rosh Kollel knew this wasn't true, but the Chizkiyahu Medini was forced to leave and forced to go away. After and now this woman wasn't workable. She wasn't. No one wanted to hire her. She was involved in a scandal, and so the money that the man paid her to say this lie ran out. So the girl went to find Reb Chizkiyahu Medini and said and begged her, "Please, nothing happened. Please, I'll tell everybody nothing happened and it was all a lie. But if you'll go to the Rosh Kollel and ask him to give me back my job." Reb Chizkiyahu Medini at that point was in a big quandary, didn't know what to do. He said, "I have an opportunity to vindicate myself, let everybody know that I really wasn't at fault. But if I clear my name, a Chilul Hashem will happen, because the other rabbi or the other Kollel member who did this will become a big Chilul Hashem." He tells the Arab girl, "I'll do what you ask me. I'll go to the Rosh Kollel and I'll tell him to hire you back. But I don't want you, and I cannot tell anybody what happened was not true, because I don't want to embarrass another person." Rav Chizkiyahu Medini concluded by saying that in the moment in which he accepted upon himself a vow of silence, he felt that a wellspring of wisdom opened up, and he absorbed a spiritual flow of wisdom that enabled him to achieve proficiency in all areas of Torah. What opened his mind to Chokhmah more than ever before was because he kept quiet. Again, related to Derech Eretz, not to embarrass somebody else. He was Re'uel. He came in front of God. He didn't complain. Right? What happens if you do complain? If you don't become a Re'uel? We all know that the moon came and complained to Hashem. The moon said, and you made the sun and the moon the same. How could it be? Hashem said, "You're right." And he minimized the moon. This is what happens when you complain. You lose out. But if you don't complain, and Adarabah, you take whatever Hashem is Mashgiach. Like we said, Hashem controls the whole world. If whatever came your way you agreed to, then you become Reuel, a friend of Hashem. Let's move on to another important lesson from this week's Parshat. Towards the end of Parshat Bamidbar, we learn that the Bnei Kahat, the tribe of Levi, they had the family of Kahat, who were Leviim. We had to be careful to make sure they didn't die. Why? They were responsible in carrying the Kodesh Kodashim, including the Aron, and we have to give them assignments so they do not die. What happens? The Levite family were assigned to carrying the Mishkan and its components. They knew that those who carried the Aron HaKodesh received the greatest schar, the most holiest, so they got the most schar. So what happened? No one wanted the Shulchan, no one wanted the Mizbeach, nobody wanted the Menorah, everybody wanted the Aron. They all come to the Aron and they're all fighting, pushing, shoving, I'm first. So Hashem commanded Moshe and Aharon to give assignments so people don't fight, because if they fight, they die. So by Kodesh Kodashim, the Mesilat Yesharim says in chapter 20, there's something called Mishkal HaHasidut. What is Mishkal HaHasidut? Weighing of Hasidut, meaning you have to weigh your options. You have a mitzvah, you have something good you want to do. You have to weigh it. Is it really good? Or is it the Yetzer Hara talking? The Yalkut Shimoni says, Ein ben Gehinom ligan Eden el kehut ha'sa'ara. The difference between going into Gan Eden and going to Gehinnom is as small as a hair's breadth. It's a small little hair. That's the difference. You're either going to Gan Eden or Gehinnom. What this means? that the same thing that you're doing, you think it's a mitzvah, but it's actually an avera if you don't pay attention.
Next door to each other.
Right next door to each other. Mishkala Hasidut. Meaning the difference in Gehenna and Gan Eden is going left or right. He explains. Mishnah Yishanim explains. What does this mean? Here when it comes to the Aron HaKodesh, what should have been a great mitzvah became a huge fight. Instead of realizing that the Kedusha is in unity, in respect, take a turn. Everybody wanted it for themselves. Disrespect. A mitzvah now became an Avera. Harav Yisrael Salanta Zechazidik Levracha was known as the father of the Musar movement. Once he was at a Talmud's house, at a student's house, and he came to washing his hands for Netilat Yadayim. He took the cup, and he took a half a cup of water, and he washed his hands. So his student told Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, he said to him, Rabbi, don't you know the Gemara says that someone who uses a full cup of water will have plenty of wealth and success? Why didn't you use a full cup? Rabbi Yisrael Salanta said, you're right, that's what the Gemara says, that it's very special to use a full cup of water. But he said, I also know where this water comes from. The water comes from the well and it's freezing cold and the maid has to go out and get it. I will not become a Hasid on someone else's back. People come, they have a yard site, Askara, so, right, Yeshua, and they come to the shul and they want to get haftarah, they want to get mashlim, and then another person, or they want to pray in the kavod of the deceased relative, and what happens is they start to fight. I want, you want, this one. Mishkala Hasidut B'Sei Hashem says, if you think about it for 1 second, you would realize that what you're doing is the opposite. Fighting is not worth it. A person really has to stop and think about these things. People go, they have weddings, right? And the Khatan has his friends come over and they're dancing away the night. And the parents of the bride and the groom themselves want to finish the wedding already. And the friends continue singing and dancing and they're going. Rav Pam says they're trying to bring some comfort. What they're doing, they don't realize. People want to go home. Babysitters are watching children. They need to go home. And there's a lot of other things except 5 people or 25 people who want to sing and dance. There are other people in the world. A person would make a simple calculation and would realize that his stretching of it may not be a mitzvah at all. Breaches in Shalom Bayit, Rav Pam says, are caused by a lack of Mishkala Hasidut. So the young wife spends much of her time thinking and preparing a special food for her husband. He knows he's supposed to be home at a certain time. He's supposed to be home 6:15. It's 6:30. He's still not home. She tries to keep the dinner hot. He's going to come home any minute. He waits. She waits. He still hasn't shown up. His phone is off. He's not texting. Finally, 8 o'clock, he shows up. And she says, what happened? And he says, oh, my friend needed a ride to the airport. So I got a big mitzvah and I took him to the airport. Rav Pam says, mitzvah, chesed. It's a complete lack of mishkala hasidut. He didn't do anything right. He caused aggravation for failing to notify her of his lateness. Chafetz Chaim, he would have guests Friday night. He would skip Shalom Aleichem. And he says, I'd rather them eat. The angels can wait. Someone came to Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky and they said to him, what's the minhag when you walk down the chuppah? Should it be 2 fathers, the father of the kala and the father of the hatan, walking down the hatan, or should it be the mother and father? What's the minhag? So Rav Yaakov said, the minhag is to do whatever the other side wants. And he said, what type of minhag is that? He says, that's the minhag. So he says to Yaakov, what did you do? Yaakov, that's what I did. But 3 of my children, we walked down the 2 fathers, and 3 of my children walked down father and mother. Harav Zev Smith says that in order to have Mishkal Hasidut properly, a person really has to know halakha. He has to know what's the Doraita mitzvah, what's the Rabbanah, what's the Ikar mitzvah, what's the Ikar din, in order to make those calculations. Someone once came to Radak Kamenetsky and told him, my workplace are not giving me off on Purim. I plan on calling out sick. This way I can have the Purim Su'udah and I can be with the family and everything. And Yaakov told him, you're doing 100% wrong. Sheker, midvah sheker tirhag, this is the Oraita. Having Su'udah on Purim is the Rabbanan. There's no reason why you should lie to do that. You have to figure out another way how you can be Yotzei the Su'udah Purim. This is what it's called Mishkal Hasidut. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach on a Shabbat once noticed a father and a son approaching him. The father was carrying a chair while the son walked empty-handed. When Rav Shlomo Zalman saw them, he said, what was going on? And the son said, I'm very machmer not to use the eruv on Shabbat. But my father, he holds with the eruv. So he gave his father to hold the heavy chair. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was terribly upset. He came to the yeshiva and he gave an entire lecture of how someone can mess up the mitzvah deoraita of kivud avayim for the mitzvah of being mahmir, to being strict and not using an eruv that was kosher. You have to really look at it. We have to really think about what we're doing. Torah is derech hedge. It be pleasant. You have to know the Torah in order to know what to do. In order to be pleasant, you have to know how to be pleasant. Chafetz Chaim would go to the yeshiva at night and he would force the students to go to sleep. You can't stay up anymore. He would tell them. They said, but we wanted to learn late in the night. He said, great. But then you're not going to be able to get up in the morning. You can't burn the candle from 2 ends. You have to have Mishkal Hasidut. You get up in the morning, you pray tefillah, you have a fresh mind, you're able to learn better. Don't think I'm staying up and doing a great mitzvah, staying up learning. It's going to take away from the morning. Before we segue into a little bit on Shavuot, which everything up to now is also Shavuot, but I think this is a very important concept to take out. What happens is, people stay up Shavuot night. Now, Shavuot night, most places are starting 11 o'clock, right? So you come to shul, you start learning. Hopefully you're one of those people that go straight to learning. Not one of those people who they make the train station, every stop in the shul, talk to everybody, look at everything, then they finally sit down. So let's say you started at 11. You learn at 11. What time is Shaharit? Shaharit already 4:15, 4:30, people are going to the mikvah. 5:26 is already what time is nets. So you're really learning, and if you're learning straight and you're not taking breaks and you're not eating in between, by the way, I don't know why people decide that they need to eat all night on Shavuot night. It's, first of all, it's not good for your system. It's better not to eat. Now I'm speaking to you as someone who stays up almost every night of the year. I work night shift, right, in the hospital. So I stay up. I can tell you some things that will help you stay up. Number one, best thing to do is not to eat too much. Right? Your stomach's not ready for that. You usually don't eat all night. It's good to drink something, stay up. If you eat 1 or 2 things, fine. But don't make a whole no. You already ate Su'udah. It's only 11 till 4:30. It's for 5 hours. It's not a whole shift. It's not even 10 hours. It's really a very small time. Spend the time by really learning. But now what happens? So Kersen came, and let's say he did learn. He didn't waste his time running around and doing all this draining around. He learned. Now what happens? He goes home, and now he goes to sleep. Oh. Now the whole Shavuot, he's tired. What do you want? I stayed up all night. Now I have to sleep. And the rest of Shavuot he doesn't learn. Because he already learned that night. This is all again, Yetzer Hara, this is not Mishkal Hasidut. What really happens, people who are really interested in learning, they learn that night, and then they're back there in the afternoon in the shul, when the shiur is going on, and everything is going on, they're back. Why? because they know the learning is. People who just come to stay up the night, they're the ones who are not coming back the next day. They're not coming for the shiur. They stayed up the night. They were said the hope that they had in their mind to do. So what do we learn? Stay up at night. It's a big minhag. We have this minhag. It's brought down that they had a minyan in the times with the Arizal, right? If they had a minyan when they stayed up the first night, they already would have been Mashiach. But we have a minhag. We stay up. Whether you do the tikkun, whether you're learning Talmud, whether you're learning something else, the main thing is that you should learn b'simcha. It should be with happiness. Because you learn b'simcha, this is going to lead to learning simcha the whole year. You should be with happy. You should find something good to learn, something exciting. Try to learn something that you can, take out something from it, so you can apply it. You can be mechadish something even better. But definitely make Shavuot more than cheesecake. That's the most important part. Have your cheesecake. Have your blintzes. I saw blintzes, cheesecake. Now you're trying to get me to stay. You wrote that all down there. So it's good to have all those things, but to remember the essence of Shavuot. Harav Malach Biederman Shlita gives a very famous story. I think everybody heard the story, but it's always I love it because it's just so apropos to what happens. That there was a rich man who goes into the yeshiva and he tells the Rosh Yeshiva, I need a chosen, I need a hatan, I need a domot. Who is the best one? I want the best one. So Rosh Yeshiva says, okay, he looks around, Chaim is the best guy. So he says to the Rosh Yeshiva, it's going to be my chosen. He's coming back with me to my city, he's going to be my chosen. So Chaim, the Shiva comes over, tells him, he says, okay, he goes back with the rich man, with his gevir, he goes back to his city. The gevir goes to shul, and he tells him, you're going to sit on my right side. He comes, he puts him down on his right side, right in the shul. Everyone comes over and says to him, who's this? It's my chosen, it's my chosen. Psh, everyone goes, wow, what a chosen with yeshiva, top of the class, wow. They go home, he says, you sleep here, I sleep here. In the morning, 6 o'clock, coming back with me to the shul. So he gets up 6 o'clock, wakes him up, goes back to the shul. Again, he tells everybody it's my chosen. Everyone's giving you a mazel tov, congratulating. He's like that the whole time. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Finally, the boy says to the rich man, he says to him, listen, I'm very happy you chose me as a hatan, that I'm going to be your domot, but, let me... Where's the kala? Let me see the kiddy. Let me go out on a date. Let me talk. Let something happen. Well, nothing's going on. And the rich man says, what are you talking about? He says, what do you mean, what are you talking about? He says, the rich man said, what are you talking about? I don't have no daughter. I don't have no one for you to go out with. He says, so why'd you call me? Why did you say? He says, everybody else has a hatan. Everybody has a hatan. I also want a hatan. So I went to the yeshiva. I told a rich man, I got a hatan. Biederman says, the same thing is when it comes to holidays. Shavuot, Hashem, whatever holiday it is. People getting excited for the holiday, getting ready. They're preparing the soup, preparing the cheesecake. They're preparing everything. Where's the kala? Where's the Torah? That they didn't think about. That didn't get ready. I don't have it. I have the cheesecake. I have everything else. Torah I forgot about. That's shalom. We have to know, the number one thing is to make sure that we take from Shavuot is the Torah. It's Matan Toratenu. It's Man Matan Toratenu. It's Hashem is giving to us a gift. Right? Matan Toratenu. Why is it called a gift? Why is Torah called a gift? Because there's no way to acquire the Torah without it being a gift. You understand? It's divine information. It's the information of a different knowledge, right? We were learning this last night. I was learning with my Torah mate, my Ura Torah mate, and we were learning Pirkei Avot. And in there, they brought down the Rambam and the Rabbeinu Yonah about free will. And how, Hakol Tzafui v'Reshut Netunah, Hashem knows everything, but Hashem gives you free will. So the question is, how can that be possible, right? So the Rambam says, you know how it can be possible? Because what you understand and the way God understands are two different understandings. So I'll give you a marshal of how to understand this. It says that Hashem created people, but B'Tselem Elokim. Hashem created people in the image of God, right? So people think that they look like God. They have some physical attribute of God. Recently, I was learning somewhere, and I saw a beautiful explanation of what it means B'Tselem Elokim. It says, an image. What's an image? A picture, right? Took a picture. So you print. Let's go back to the old days where they print a picture. So I have a picture of you. Now, is this piece of paper you? No. Does it have anything about you? Does it have muscle mass? Does it have fat? Does it have It's
Resemblance.
nothing. It's just a painting. It's just a different materials that look like something else. It's not even 3D. It's all in 2D, right? So this is what it means with Tzal Elokim. Don't think that you look like God. You're not. Hashem put you in the image of God. There's some sort of resemblance, but it's nothing of the exact components of Hashem. It's because people confuse themselves. So the Rambam says the same thing when it comes to knowledge. He says Hashem's knowledge is not our knowledge. Our knowledge and Hashem, the way we understand information and the way God understands information are two different knowledges, two different understandings of what it is. I want to end off with one more mashal, one more preparation for Shavuot. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Gemara says in Pesach Shavuot, right? Daf Pechet, if I'm not mistaken, the Moshe Rabbeinu came up to Shemaim to get the Torah, and the Malachim say, "Who is this man born of a woman doing up here? Can't have the Torah." And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, "Hold my throne, answer." Right? He's scared. They have fire breath. Hashem says, "I'll protect you." Moshe answers them and says, "Do you have a mother and father? Did you get out of Mitzrayim?" And the angels say, "Oh, you're right. You got us. Okay, the Torah is yours. You can take it." And then they all give him all sorts of gifts. Even the Malach HaMavet gives him a gift. The Ketoret and how it stops in Magefa. And Moshe Rabbeinu takes the Torah. Now, the hard part is to understand what the Malachim didn't know. The Malachim didn't know that what's written in the Torah, that it says Kibud Avayim. It says Ani Hashem Elokeichem Asher Hotzeti Etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim. That Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim. They didn't know any of this. So the Dubno Maggid gives a mashal. He says it was a Rav, a big Chacham, a big Rav who lived in a large city, and everyone knew him. He was very busy, and all the time people were coming to him. And as he started to get older, he felt the job was too much for him. Couldn't handle anymore. He needed to be a young, vigorous person to do it, and he couldn't do it anymore. So he decided he was going to live out the rest of his life in a small town. He was looking for a small town to hire him. And he found another town, a small town. They hired him as a Rav. So he told his current community, he said, "Listen, I'm old. I can't do it anymore. I'm leaving." And they said, yes, we understand. We love that you were here for so long, and we'll give you our blessings. You can go. And the day arrived for him to leave. And as he's walking out of his house, the members of his current community, of the big city, come out and they block his door. They don't let him walk out. They say, no, you can't leave. He says to them, "What do you mean? We spoke about it. You know I'm leaving." They said, "Oh yeah, you're right. Okay. He gets down to the wagon that's waiting to take him to the train station. Again, they all surround the wagon. They don't let him in. He says, "I don't understand you guys. I told you I'm going to go. You agreed. Oh, you're right. Everyone walked away. Let him inside the wagon." He gets in the wagon, and the wagon starts to pull away. Again, they all run in front of the road, and they block it. He comes out. He says, "I don't understand you guys. We spoke about it. I'm leaving." They said, "Oh, you're right. We're going to let you go." He says, "So why did you make all this craziness 3 times you stopped me?" And the community said to the Rav, "You're going from a large community to a small community. A small community might think, you know why you're leaving? Because you can't do your job anymore. That you're not so chashuv, and we're kicking you out. So we want to show them opposite. We don't want you to leave. We've been holding you down. Now we understand you have to leave, but we're going to hold you down to show them the hashivut, the importance of who you are." Dubno Maggid says that was what was going on in Shemayim. The angels knew it was going down to earth. And Moshe Rabbeinu was going to take it. But they said, we're not going to let Moshe Rabbeinu just walk in and get it and walk out. It's not showing any hashivut to the Torah. We're going to make a whole scene. We're going to stop him. We're going to tell him what? In order to show Moshe Rabbeinu and the Jewish people the hashivut of the Torah. To sum up what we learned up to this point. Again, this is a special edition of the Shir. We're already 54 minutes in. This is Shavuot, Parshat Bamidbar. What we learned so far, just to sum up. We learned that Parshat Bamidbar is dafka, before Shavuot. The Ashur HaKadosh says, because Parshat Bamidbar teaches us about Derech Eretz Kadmal Torah. In order to get Torah, you have to have Derech Eretz. And we brought down proof after proof that Derech Eretz is the most important factor in Yahadut. The most important factor in Judaism is Derech Eretz. And we saw it because Moshe Rabbeinu didn't say the Nisi'im until Hashem told him who the Nisi'im were. He didn't do it in public, he did it in private in order not to embarrass or cause anybody any other pain. And we went through story after story to prove that. Our next lesson was how you can become a friend of Hashem by being Mivater, like we had Eliasaf ben Deuel, who became Eliasaf ben Reuel, which means a friend of Hashem. And if a person becomes a friend of Hashem, Hashem opens up all sorts of avenues for him. Again, related to Derech Eretz, Kamal Torah. And then our third lesson from the parasha was Mishkala Hasidut. That when we act, we have to act with knowledge of what's correct and what's not. We have to really look into Derech Eretz, look into what the Torah says, what Ikar Adin. The person has to know Torah in order to be able to understand these things. We spoke about this a lot on Pesach as well. And then, in our final segment, we talked about Shavuot. We talked about earlier about Megillat Ruth and how to influence people. Now, Ruth became a Gioret because of Naomi. Naomi, who was pleasant. If someone has Derech Eretz, people see that and they take that and they become part of it. We learned how, while we're doing all our preparations for Shavuot, we shouldn't forget that Matan Torah is the most important. And then we saw how the angels had chashivut for the Torah. We have to have chashivut for the Torah. And our respect for the Torah is what will lead our children and our friends and everyone else to have respect for Torah as well. Rabotai, I cannot stress how important it is that we learn Torah and we show respect for the Torah. We look out in the world today, I don't know if there ever was a time like this. Already 50 years or 100 years ago, the Rabbanim were saying it's very bad, right? And you understand, when the Rabbanim were saying it's very bad 50, 100 years ago, they already saw what was going to happen. Or Victor Miller said many times, whatever was going on in the Goyish world, the generation before, starts to seep into the Jewish world the next generation, if we're not careful. That's what Victor Miller said. And you see it happening now. Things that are creeping in that we never thought possible are starting to come in. And therefore, the only way to keep strong is to build our teva, is to build our bet midrash, to stay inside and connect to the Torah. Torah is all the life. Everybody looking for the gold, everyone looking for the sin, everyone looking for the life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to us and says, choose life. He told you, here it is, and choose it. Maybe zocheh to have a zisa, a sweet life. V'harevna. We say it on Shavuot, we have to say it. I think that's the reason why we eat cheesecake on Shavuot. To show the Torah is sweet. And you should have a sweet life, you should have a sweet cheesecake with Hashem, we should have sweet Torah. And if you don't find Torah sweet, it's not that Torah is not sweet. You need a little mouthwash, you need a little cleanse in order for you to feel the sweetness. And may Hashem give us a zechut to have that sweetness, to be mekabel the Torah b'ahava, and we should see all the Yeshuot, all the Hamot, and we should see the Geula Shalema, b'meher b'yameinu. Amen. Shabbat Shalom, v'chag sameach l'kulam.